Welcome everyone, Costin here with the discussion about an in-game rivalry in Total War Warhammer 3. And that is the rivalry between Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, the best legendary lord of Grand Cathay that starts in Cathay, Yanbo is focused on Lustra, and Deathmaster Snikch, the best legendary lord of the Skaven, by far, from my personal perspective. And I find this an interesting situation from both a single-player standpoint and a multiplayer standpoint. Basically, if you're playing a campaign as Zhao Ming, the biggest threat you will face throughout pretty much your entire campaign is going to be Snikch. He is the only one that can realistically defeat you. Everyone else is just maybe at most going to slow you down. Whereas if you're playing Snikch, the main threat that you're going to face in your campaign is going to be Zhao Ming. Miao Ying is a secondary threat. Certainly she can produce quite a few armies that she can throw against you, but compared to the Iron Dragon, she is a significantly smaller threat. So you really end up having this dynamic, whether or not you're playing Zhao Ming or Snikch, that your main opponent, the one that you're going to have to deal with, is the other one. And it is an interesting situation because both of these guys are very powerful legendary lord. Both of them have significant campaign resources and both of them can defeat the other in an open field battle. So it's not just like, oh, I'll just take my army and throw it against the other. If you're playing a multiplayer campaign as Snikch versus Zhao Ming, you could win. Snikch does have, generally speaking, a powerful army that can hard counter what Cathay can bring to the table, but it's not like Zhao Ming doesn't have his own benefits, because he absolutely does. He does start with Fire Rain Rockets, he does have Celestial Dragon Guard, he has an Alchemist, so Zhao Ming is not exactly a weakling as a Legendary Lord over here. So let me explore these two Legendary Lords and explain how their campaigns work. I'll start with Zhao Ming. Now Zhao Ming starts with Kang, and he can take Hanyu Port out resolve just very easily on turn 1. Now, you might think that him having a barracks in a minor settlement is a downside, but in reality it's actually a significant benefit. And he also has a starting province that has 3 regions in it. There is a minor Skaven faction over here that you can defeat after turn 1. So what you will do in a campaign as Zhao Ming is the following. You'll take Hanyu Port, auto-resolve it, take the Skaven out, recruit some Jade Warriors, start getting that barracks to tier 2, get those Jade Warriors, get quite a few of them, get a Yang building, the Warriors Market, so you can get a bit of Yang for that local recruitment capacity, and you will recruit a decent enough army by the time you actually leave this province to go for Shangyang. And keep in mind, again, Snikch is your biggest concern in this campaign, but you can't just Zerg rush him. It's gonna take too long to get to him, so if you're trying to deal with that, it's just too many turns, even if you're moving at the fastest possible speed. You can't just Zerg rush. Same situation with Snikch. You can't just ignore everything else and rush the other, because, yeah, there is quite a good amount of terrain to cover, and if you ignore everything else, specifically Miao Ying or the Celestial Loyalist, and even Lokir, who by the way doesn't like you as a Skaven, you might end up being crushed by any of those threats. So you need to be kind of careful about how you're going to play this campaign, regardless of who you're picking. You can't just rush the other. If you're really good in battles, sure, you might decide to pick that fight. You will certainly have a full stack of decent enough troops to be able to take down the other. But Zhao Ming, starting with a tier 2 minor settlement, he can start building a tier 2 barracks over here in this settlement, is actually quite nice. It's not exactly a great situation to have a barracks in a provincial capital, because these barracks only go to tier 3, you will benefit more by constructing other things in your provincial capital, or having those building slots, or building the barracks in a minor settlement is something you will eventually want to do regardless. So it's actually more comfortable. Besides, there's a greater distance between you over here with Kang and then Hanyu Port. So the only threat might be Gorst or Greases. So if someone's playing Greases in multiplayer, sure, he could crush you, but if you're playing Greases, you don't want to fight Zhao Ming. In fact, you might want to ally Zhao Ming, because you've got let's just say you've got other problems to deal with in your campaign. The last thing you want to do as Greases is pick a fight with Cathay. That is not a wise idea in a Greases campaign, suffice to say. So if you're playing Zhao Ming, you recruit a bunch of Jade Warriors, you will get a total of, you'll get on turn 2, you will have 5, and then on turn 3 you will have 8, and then you get some Jade Warrior crossbowmen. Now this is a pretty good army. In fact, it's a very strong army. Problem is, you can't just take this army and rush Snikch. You do want to take Xiangyang, and the best way of doing so is go on Xiangyang, take the Shrine of the Alchemist, and take Taizu, and then you can march on Snikch. Problem is, this is predictable, and you could do it a bit faster. You will certainly have a full stack of troops, or you could take your time, take Xiangyang, get the second army over here in Shenwu, and start recruiting more Jade Warrior crossbowmen. Cathay basically ignores supply lines as long as you have balanced harmony, so you're kind of in a situation like, and even if you're going with Yang, you're getting a recruitment cost reduction and that recruit rank and local recruit capacity. And as Zhao Ming, you get 15 armor for melee units, more caravan capacity, and also in the army itself, you get an upkeep of minus 25% for melee units and more magic item drop chance. So you're in a really good position over here as Zhao Ming to take advantage of the situation and become really, really, really powerful in a campaign. In fact, if you've ever played a campaign as Zhao Ming, you know how easily you can and should steamroll this particular map. Like, it's pretty simple. Set up a caravan, send the caravan, get casualty replenishment, all of this good stuff. So how would you go? But here's the thing, and this is going to be the awkward part. While you have a great campaign plan, if you're dealing with AI, if you're dealing with another player, things get a bit more complicated. Specifically, Snikch. Why Snikch? Why not Loki or why not Village? Snikch has an army that hard counters Cathay's entire early game roster. It's not even funny. It's like, what does Cathay have? Cathay has Jade Warriors, which are relatively slow and very durable infantry, sure, with a good amount of missile defense, really good amount of armor, especially for Zhao Ming, but they don't really do a great deal of damage in melee. Really, these are line holders, and you'd rely on Jade Warrior crossbowmen. The durability, not the damage dealing capability of Cathay's early game army is really their main strength. But here's where Snikch comes in. Snikch has armor-piercing missiles on every single one of his early game units. So Night Runners with slings, they are going to do the vast majority of their range damage is going to be armor piercing. So Snikch hard counters your army. On top of that, Snikch is one of the best duelists in the entire game. So suddenly, your significant strength that you do have if you're playing Zhao Ming is not quite as significant. And you end up in a situation where even when dealing with AI, you have to be a bit careful. The way you defeat Snikch is you auto-resolve his armies. Like, if you actually end up in a 1v1 fight against Snikch, it's going to be pretty brutal. Like, 20 units of yours versus 20 units of Snikch, it's not exactly a very comfortable fight, I have to say. And keep in mind, Snikch can get more heroes than you, can get better casualty replenishment than you, can get a better income than you. And it can get very cheap units and can mass those units. So if you're playing Zhao Ming, it is going to be a hell of a fight. How would you defeat him, though? That is an interesting dilemma. You can take these two provinces and use them against Snikch and just try and rush Singpo. This is one of Snitch's main weaknesses in his campaign. If you can take Singpo, that is where a lot of Snitch's recruitment and economic potential is concentrated. So really the battle between Snikch and Zhao Ming may come down to Singpo. And this is important to understand if you're playing a campaign as either Zhao Ming or as Snikch, even for a single player, to understand these critical points. Snikch has a better army, but he has to have one significant vulnerability in his campaign. But in other ways, he is far stronger. However, it's not all sunshine for his campaign. It should be noted that Zhao Ming does have a good amount of allies, does have a good amount of diplomatic potential in his campaign, does have a good amount of trading partners that he can utilize very effectively in his campaign, and can really make it work quite well if you know what you're doing. So for instance, you go to Greece's, you set up a trading agreement, you declare war on the cross clubs. It will work. It will work quite effectively. And the cross clubs, by the way, are not going to attack you because they're going to be wiped out by Greases on any difficulty long before they can be even a threat. Like, they only have these two settlements, so they're just going to lose them in, like, 3 turns at most. But you have a relatively safe position, but you're up against the horde of Skaven that will be unleashed on you. And the only thing you really got going for you is that you have more allies that you can rely on than Snikch does. So that's Zhao Ming's situation. Let's talk about Snikch for just a second here. On Snikch's side of things, he starts with a really, really good campaign plan and a really powerful army over here. He has one of the best best artillery units in the entire game in the terms of the poison wind mortars. While they do lack the range of certain other artillery units, the sheer amount of damage that they can do, well, let's just put it like this. Snikch can take over his entire starting province with just his initial army. And I mean it easily, on legendary. And therein lies the significant benefit that Snikch can get in his campaign. Furthermore, he can also get a hidden layer at tier 1. And he does start with the Den of Dread Deeds, which generates a huge amount of income, gives him a good amount of control and growth. This is what I mean about Snikch's economic potential being concentrated in Singpo. You have a landmark that generates 400 income, and you have the gem mineshaft, which generates a further 100, and those 20 gemstone resource production, which you can trade with someone like Lokir, and it goes all the way to 300. You start with the ability of producing Night Runners and Night Runners with slings, which, given your faction effects of having armor-piercing warp-infused projectiles, means you hard counter Cathay's army with what you do have. But obviously the vulnerability, as I've discussed, is the fact that, yes, a lot of your early game economy is reliant on Singpo. And if you lose that early game, that particular settlement, things are going to be particularly nasty in your campaign. Now, here's something you need to know about Snikch. Snikch can take this entire province very, very easily, very, very quickly in his campaign. Like recruit an assassin over here, master assassin, in this particular campaign so that he can attack the Jadewind Mountain. You put Snikch with his army in support over there, then you force march him towards Kumlan. And by turn 3, you've got an entire province under your control. Like, it's a very easy campaign plan, and it works brilliantly well, in point of fact. And then you end up, and then you realize you're surrounded on all sides. You've got the Celestial Loyalists to the north, Xiao Miaoying to the north, and if you've ever played against Cathay on Legendary, you know how many armies Cathay can put together. That is the vulnerability. This is why, by the way, if you're playing Snikch, you want to be as aggressive as possible. Because, one, you can be extremely aggressive and succeed in this campaign. And two, if you're not aggressive, you will end up losing. But on top of that, Snikch is crazy. Like, when I say this guy is crazy, he has a leadership benefit for Night Runners, Gutter Runners, Death Runners. He has a significant amount of ambush success chance. He has a good amount of combat power. This guy was designed as a counter to Malice Darkblade. And if you've ever seen Malice Darkblade in combat, he's incredible. He has a huge chance of ambushing an opponent when he goes in battle against them. And he gets all of these clan contracts and the significant amount of benefits like stealing money, getting vision, taking food, getting ancillaries, putting a leadership penalty. So even though Snikch may seem like he's in a vulnerable state, the vulnerability is non-existent as far as I see it. There's, like, losing a campaign as Snikch against AI is extremely difficult. You might argue, well, you know, Miaoying will come from the north, Zhao Ming from the southeast. Sure, from the southwest. Sure, that can happen, but you know what they're going to do. You know Miaoying is going to go north and deal with the rebels she's initially facing. You know Zhao Ming is going to threaten Singpo, so you can plan around that. And even if you're playing Zhao Ming, you do want to do this. So the plans are predictable. Snikch has choices. You don't need to deal with the Greenskins. It is a good plan in your campaign to deal with them, but it's not strictly necessary to do so. In point of fact, there's potentially reasons why you may not care all that much to do so. So over here, for instance, that is, let's just say, that is a significant level of bullshittery that Snikch gets up to in his campaign. So for instance, over here, you know, I could have actually just recruited those 4 units over there. It might have actually worked better, because suddenly, okay, let's just move him over there. Take that particular settlement and put it over here. Jadewind Mountain under my control. And we march north towards Kumlan and get more Night Runners with slings. Yeah, the amount of recruitment you can have as Skaven early on in your campaign is, let's just say, a pretty crazy significant amount. And gonna recruit another Master Assassin. His name, what the name? Yeah, sometimes I do struggle to take these names seriously. And also, just because you get all these missions over here in your campaign very early on, does mean you can get a lot of money from these campaigns early on as well. So you have a good amount of potential over here in your campaign. Your eastern flank is protected by Lokir, who you can be good friends with, and you don't really have to worry about too many things in this campaign. I mean, even if they take the Village of the Moon here, it's not really a huge affair, I would argue. And as I said, Kumlan, you take Kumlan, you take it as a tier 3 settlement, and how to put it, tier 3 means you get engineers and you get plague claws. So I don't know about you, but if I was a betting man, I would probably put my money on Snikch, to be honest with you. Sure, things may not necessarily go the way you want them to in a campaign. In fact, they might go very, very poorly for any number of reasons, but guy's got potential. What can I say? A significant amount of said potential. It's crazy to think about the sheer level of power that Snikch does have access to, and the insanity that does start happening in this particular campaign. I'm serious. Like, there is nothing rational about this. There's absolutely nothing rational at all in this entire freaking campaign. Like, you start recruiting assassins and you go like, okay, here's one, here's another. It's like, freaking heck, you're like a steamroll of a steamroll faction that cannot be stopped. The one thing that Cathay does have against you is, like, they do have that significant auto-resolve benefit. And that's not something you should ignore, because that's one of the things that they will have against you. You can use mods, of course, that do play out pretty well. But yeah, the level of power that you have on your hands, it's insanity. I don't know how to describe it in any other way. It's like pure freaking madness of the highest possible order that very few other campaigns. Like, people talk about like how our Scarbrand is a steamroll. I'm like, welcome to the Skaven steamroll in a campaign. Like, just consider what I'm doing here. Okay, maybe things didn't work out the best possible way. I made some mistakes, could have recruited those units, maybe even transferred some units to that secondary army over there, and yeah, attacked Kumlan on the previous turn, potentially, if I had played my cards right. But yeah, the potential here is bananas. Like, the AI can't keep up with you, and honestly, if I was a player going up against Snikch, controlled by another player, I'm not sure how that would work out, really, to be quite honest with you. Like, you'll see what this guy can do in his campaign. You start questioning, how the hell are you going to win against that? If you try and go against him directly, like, your only bet is probably to try and take his settlements and do some settlement hopping, so that he doesn't, so that he is actually forced to fight you, so that he can't ambush you, because that's the problem that you will face potentially dealing with Snikch. He will ambush you. And if he does ambush you, things are gonna start getting really nasty really quickly. All I can say over there. Like, it's not even funny. The sheer craziness of this entire situation is not amusing at all. Suffice to say. Oh dear. The madness continues. The madness does continue. So in this particular situation, like it's a war on Miao Yang. What are gonna do? Like, what is anyone gonna do against freaking Snikch? No joke. Seriously, like, what are they gonna do? Like, try and stop me? Good luck with that. All I can say. Very few people can stop you at this particular point in your campaign. It's like, oh, you got a rebellion. Big deal. That's all I'm gonna say. Big freaking deal. You get heroes, you get a lot of abilities to your heroes. It spirals out of control. The one thing that stops you is you might run out of money. And it's not necessarily like the idea that you're just starting your campaign and you're instantly starting to recruit 2 entire stacks of troops. And we're not talking Skaven slaves or clan rats over here. No, we're talking night runners, which are significantly better than any clan rat in the entire game. It is absurd. It is pure madness of the highest possible order. And you can take it even further. Even further. You don't stop. You can't be stopped. Anyone who tries to stops you is just meat. Actually, this is the thing. You want, like, if you're playing Snikch...
A quest has been issued.
Like, okay. Oh, quest pal. It's like, oh, I'm going to be stopped by a bunch of Skaven. It's like, no, I'm not going to be stopped by a bunch of Skaven in a quest battle. I'm going to destroy a bunch of Skaven, get free experience and free money. It's like, oh, I'm running out of money over here in this campaign. Whatever shall I do? Oh, right. There's free money waiting for me in a quest battle that's very, very easy to deal with. It's like, hilarity ensues. What can I say? That's not... It's crazy. It's insanity. It doesn't compare to any other campaign that exists in the game in any way, shape, or form. Like, this is not reasonable. I mean, people talk about how Grimgore is madness. I'm like, can we talk about the madness of Snikch? Because it's like, I just got an Armor of Destiny on turn fucking 5. It's just like... Yeah, this is not reasonable. And if I fight that quest battle, I'm even stronger. Literally, even freaking stronger than that. Turn this army around, recruit the full stack, take this entire province, still Celestial Lake, take it for myself, get jump scared, get... Yeah. Madness. Just pure madness. So... who do you think would win in a 1v1 fight between Snikch and Zhao Ming? Keep in mind, both of them are strong lords. Both of them have their own significant advantages and disadvantages, if you will. Personally, I would obviously go for Snikch, but remember, you are hated. Like, that's one of the things you gotta keep in mind with this kind of situation. A lot of factions do hate you as the Skaven, and your only ally is Lokir, and if you're relying on Lokir doing anything for you in your campaign, yeah, it's like, that's probably going to be a bad idea for your health and well-being, let's put it like that. Cosine signing out. Stay tuned for more.